Today's game is a project that has both massively excited people and confused them ever since the day it was announced. TMNT, The Last Ronin. Because this game stands in a very different place from the classic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles vibe we're used to. Here, instead of colorful team spirit, there's a much darker, harsher, and more emotional story. And the interesting part is this. The game has officially been announced, it is officially in development, but despite all the time that has passed, we still don't have that many concrete gameplay details in our hands. So in this video today, we're going to take a detailed look at all the major developments since the game was first announced, the official statements, the story side, gameplay expectations, and the current state of the project. If you enjoy this kind of gaming content, new developments, detailed breakdowns, and videos about major projects, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video before we begin. Actually, it was completely natural for players to become interested in this game the moment its name started being mentioned, because The Last Ronin is not an ordinary TMNT story. This universe is built on one of the darkest, most tragic, and most mature stories in the entire franchise. So here, instead of cheerful brotherhood moments, there's the weight of loss, revenge, loneliness, and a broken world. Even back when the game first started being talked about, that was exactly what grabbed people's attention. Everyone thought the same thing. If they really make this as a large-scale, high-quality game, something very different could come out of it. The first serious signal for this game came at the beginning of 2023. Around that time, statements from Paramount revealed that a game based on The Last Ronin was in development. And one of the most attention-grabbing things was that it was being envisioned as a third-person action RPG. On top of that, people were talking about a structure similar to the modern God of War games. Naturally, that pushed expectations much higher. Because the moment you make that kind of comparison, people stop imagining a small licensed game and start picturing something bigger, more cinematic, and much more serious. Then, on the 11th of August, 2023, the game was officially announced during the THQ Nordic Digital Showcase. That was the moment the project became fully real. At that point, it was no longer just an interview detail or an industry rumor. The game truly existed. A teaser was released, the platforms were announced, and it became clear that this was the official video game adaptation of The Last Ronin. The announced platforms were PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, S, and PC. So right from the start, it was positioned as a project focused on current-gen systems. Even though the teaser was very short, I think the atmosphere it gave off was extremely important, because from the very first moment, it made one thing clear. This was not going to have the classic TMNT tone. A ruined future, a city under oppression, a lone warrior, and a dark character carrying the burden of his lost family on his shoulders. Even in just a few seconds, it was obvious that this project would sit in a much heavier emotional space. And for people who already knew the Last Ronin name, that was not surprising at all, because the source material itself is built on exactly that tone. When we look at the comic side, we understand even better why there was so much excitement. The Last Ronin takes place in an alternate future of the TMNT universe. New York is in ruins, the city is being crushed under an oppressive system, and only one turtle remains. He has lost his brothers, carries the past on his shoulders, and is now walking toward one final reckoning. One of the most striking things about this story was that the identity of that last surviving turtle was originally presented as a mystery. But now we all know who it is. The final surviving turtle is Michelangelo. I think one of the things that makes this game so interesting is exactly that. Because Michelangelo is normally known as the most laid-back, funniest, and most lighthearted character in the group. But the Mikey we see in The Last Ronin is no longer that old Mikey. Here, we're seeing a character shaped by loss, hardened by loneliness, and carrying anger and pain inside him. So it's not just the story that is dark, the character himself has also become something very different. And that seriously increases the emotional weight of the game. Because the player won't just be watching a character who fights enemies, but a broken hero who is living with his past. Now let's get to the most curious topic. What kind of game will this actually be? Officially, what we know is this. The project is defined as a single-player, third-person action RPG. That alone is a very big deal, because it shows that the game is aiming for something more story-driven, more cinematic, and more character-focused, rather than a co-op-heavy or arcade-style experience. That God of War comparison comes into play here. Of course, that doesn't mean it will be exactly the same thing, but it very clearly communicates the feeling they want to give players. A heavier, more serious, and larger feeling action game. But we have to be honest here. Right now, we still don't have a real, extended gameplay showcase, so we still haven't clearly seen how the combat system will work, how deep the RPG side will be, whether it will be open world or move through more controlled spaces, what the enemy variety will look like, or how the boss designs will feel. None of that has been shown clearly yet. So a lot of information circulating online is sometimes presented as more certain than it actually is. But the truth is, the officially confirmed details are still limited right now. We're mostly making strong predictions based on the announced framework and the spirit of the source material. For example, one of the most talked about expectations is the possibility that Michelangelo may somehow be able to use his brother's weapons as well. Because in the comic, that feeling of inheritance stands in a very powerful place. If the game uses that well on a mechanical level, then even though we're playing as a single character, we could still feel different combat styles within the fighting system. Maybe weapon switching, maybe different combat approaches, or maybe a system where each weapon carries its own emotional meaning. Just imagine it. That wouldn't only create gameplay variety, it would also strengthen the story. Because in that case, Mikey wouldn't just be fighting alone. He would also be carrying the legacy of his brothers with him. The game is being developed by Black Forest Games. This team is especially known for the Destroy All Humans remake projects. So they are not completely inexperienced when it comes to building action-based, modernized, and visually updated game structures. But the kind of territory they are entering with a project like The Last Ronin is much more difficult. Because here, it's not just gameplay that matters. Tone matters. Atmosphere matters. Emotion matters. If this game is made like an ordinary action title, it could fall far below its potential. So for Black Forest Games, this project could also be a chance to prove itself on a completely different level. Unfortunately, the news that came at the beginning of 2024 created instant concern among people, because it came out that Black Forest Games had gone through serious layoffs. And when you hear about downsizing at a studio developing a large-scale project like this, naturally everyone starts asking the same question. Is the game in trouble? Has the project slowed down? Is this silence because of that? And honestly, those questions are not irrational at all. Because when you're developing a big action RPG, team strength is a critical issue. But the important part is this. Despite all of those problems, the game was not canceled. In fact, even today, when we look at Black Forest Games' official website, we can still clearly see that the studio is working on TMNT, The Last Ronin. That is very important, because there is no official picture showing that the game is gone, shelved, or quietly canceled. Yes, the process is very quiet. Yes, we don't have much content. But officially, the project is still alive. So right now, there is no concrete reason to doubt the game's existence. Statements from Kevin Eastman during 2024 were also encouraging. Eastman said he had seen some visual material from the game and had been very impressed by it. In particular, the fact that he described some of the sets and characters as feeling like they had stepped right out of the comic book pages made it seem like the project was moving in the right direction, at least in terms of atmosphere and visual faithfulness. And I think that's an important detail, because in an adaptation like The Last Ronin, it's not enough just to make the character model. You also have to carry the gloom, destruction, and loneliness of that world. Honestly, the reason The Last Ronin has left such a huge impact on players is not just because of the TMNT brand. The real issue is that this story is built on a genuinely strong idea: a lone Michelangelo, a ruined future, a suppressed city, an endless feeling of grief, and one final reckoning. When all of that comes together, this project feels like much more than just an ordinary licensed game. People are not looking at this game as simply a turtle game. They're looking at it more like, could we actually get a really powerful character story here? But when we move past 2024, the biggest problem still appears in the same place: silence. Because no new gameplay footage came from the game. No clear release date was announced. No major detail breakdown was shared. No developer diaries or long presentation videos arrived. So the game is officially still alive, but on the public side, it is barely speaking at all. And that naturally creates impatience in people. Because after that teaser, everyone was waiting for the next big step, but that step still hasn't come. What I see here is this. The project is probably still in development, but it isn't being pushed forward publicly because it's not ready to be shown yet. And sometimes that can be a good thing, because some games get shown way too early and then spend years falling apart in front of players. Maybe they're following a more controlled marketing process here. But on the other hand, this much silence also naturally makes the question, are things going well behind the scenes, grow even bigger? And that has basically become the main feeling surrounding The Last Ronin today. The excitement is there, but so are some serious question marks. There's also one more hopeful thing on the story side. The Last Ronin universe continues to grow in the comic book world. So this world didn't remain just a single miniseries. New stories and content exploring what came before and after have continued to appear. That shows that the brand itself has remained alive. Even if the game is staying quiet, the idea of The Last Ronin has not been forgotten. On the contrary, this dark sub-universe is still being fed. And I think that also indirectly shows how strong people find the concept behind the game. So what could happen if this game actually turns out great? I think something very big could happen. Because the TMNT brand has seen many games before, but there are very few projects built on material as prestigious and emotionally heavy as The Last Ronin. If this team makes the combat satisfying, builds the atmosphere strongly, handles Michelangelo's inner world well, and makes the story felt not just through cutscenes but through gameplay itself, then this could become a game people talk about a lot. It could even become the best game adaptation in TMNT history, because the material is incredibly well suited for that. But of course, the risks are also big. The bigger the expectations, the bigger the possibility of disappointment. If they made a God of War comparison, then players will naturally expect higher quality. If the comic is this beloved, then people will want its spirit to be preserved. So this game is carrying both brand pressure and story pressure. Just making something decent might not be enough. What players are expecting is a truly strong action game and a truly strong story experience. The thing I most want to see is this game finding a way to weave Michelangelo's pain into the gameplay itself, because that is where the Last Ronin's real difference lies. If it ends up being just an action game where we fight and move forward, then the story's potential won't have been fully used. But if the weapon choices, environment details, flashback structure, sound design, and character animations make us feel that loneliness, then that is the moment the Last Ronin could truly become a special game. And in that case, people won't just talk about it as a good TMNT game, they'll talk about it directly as a good game. At the point we've reached today, the picture is actually clear. TMNT. The Last Ronin is an officially announced game. It is officially being made. It is being published by THQ Nordic, developed by Black Forest Games, and prepared for PS5, Xbox Series X, S, and PC. It is defined as a single-player third-person action RPG, and it stands out with its dark, mature tone. But there is still no release date, still no extensive gameplay, and still many important system details remain unknown. So, in one sense, the game is very real, and in another sense, it is still preserving its mystery. That's why when I look at this project, I don't become completely pessimistic, but I also don't get swept away by empty hype. I think what we have right now is a project with a very strong foundation, huge potential, but one that demands patience. The moment a new trailer arrives, and especially if the gameplay looks solid, this game could suddenly become a huge topic again. Because the story is strong, the concept is strong, and the character is strong. Now the real question is this: will they actually be able to turn all of that into a genuinely great game? Time will tell. But I can say this very comfortably. TMNT. The Last Ronin is currently one of the most intriguing, quiet projects in the gaming world, because there is a very powerful idea at the center of it. And if that idea is brought to life the right way, this could become a title that attracts not just TMNT fans, but anyone who loves action games. Right now, I'm still hopeful, but I also don't want to go too far before we see a new trailer or gameplay. For now, that's the situation. The game officially exists. It is officially in development, but all of us are now waiting for that next big showcase. So what do you think about this game? Do you think a project big enough to meet expectations is really coming, or does this long silence create question marks for you? Make sure to write your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more gaming content like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. See you in the next video.